Hi, second grade readers, Mr. Hagen here. Today I want to teach you that readers notice and name details in the poetry that they read. So while you're reading a poem, that means that you slow down and you do some thinking about the different tools or devices that an author uses inside their poem. All right, readers, this is what's going to happen. We already heard the introduction. This is the overview. The lesson today is going to be about literary devices, and it's important that during the lesson, you stop when the video asks you to take a screenshot, then you're going to watch a quick example, then you're going to try it. Second graders, pause the video now and take a screenshot. You're going to need to use this later. Pay attention to the colors that are being used because later you're going to use these colors in your work. Okay, so details are not always literary devices, but today we're going to focus on literary devices. And a literary device is a move, a craft move, or a strategy that an author uses to share an idea. So I'm going to talk about each one right now. These start from easiest and then move down to more complex or more difficult. Okay, so the first one is repetition. This is just words or lines that repeat themselves. So sometimes it might be at the end of every stanza an author says something, or it might be a phrase that's used at the beginning and end, or it could be an author just repeating the same word over and over again. That's called repetition, okay, that's yellow. Alliteration. That's an author using words that start with the same sound. An example might be slowly sipped some syrup. Alliteration doesn't always have to be a string of 4 or more words. Sometimes it's only 2, and sometimes there's words that might separate words that are being used in alliteration. Okay? The next one has a really fancy and difficult to say and spell name, onomatopoeia. Those are sound words. Next, in orange, we have simile statements. Okay, a simile compares two things using the words like or as. Similes are easy to find because you look for those words. And I've written the same simile using both. So her hair is like silk, or her hair is as soft as silk. Metaphor is the same thing. It's comparing two things, but the metaphor just names one thing as something else. So if we were talking about the same person's hair, we would just say, her hair is silk. Next is personification. And that's when you give human qualities to things that are not human. Here's an example. The tall grass danced in the wind. Now, dancing is something that humans do. So in this sentence, I'm giving a human quality to something that's not human. I could also say the bird sang. Singing is human. Last, we have hyperbole. And many of you know what exaggeration is. Exaggeration is where you say something that's more than it really is. So here's an example. He died laughing. Well, we know nobody dies from laughing, but we hear people use that expression. Or she was so hot, her skin was melting. Or somebody might say, it's 1,000 degrees outside today. Those are all exaggerations. They're almost impossible. All right, readers, this is how this is going to work. It's important that when you do the work, find the activity in Seesaw, and then you actually have 3 poems to choose from. The first one is called New York City. The second one is called April. And the third one might be the easiest, but it's the longest. It's the entire book, Owl Moon. And we've taken out the pictures, and you can just see the text over 3 pages. If you want, you could just do 1 page. So pick one of these pages to do. Or if you want to challenge yourself, do it all. Owl Moon is a picture book, but it's written poetically, like a poem. So here's what you do. Once you pick something, you're going to use the pen tool to match up the colors. So you're going to do some reading and then underline the different devices that you notice. So this is the 3rd page of Owl Moon that I'm using as an example, and I'm first noticing that There's some repetition here. For 1 minute, 3 minutes, maybe even 100 minutes, we stared at one another. So this saying minutes over and over again is repetition. The next thing I noticed, maybe even 100 minutes, the author's exaggerating. They really didn't wait there that long while they were looking at the owl. Okay, then I switched to orange when I noticed this. Then the owl pumped its great wings and lifted off the branch like a shadow without sound. Then down here I noticed that the author is naming one thing as something else. He says, but I was a shadow as we walked home. So the narrator, the boy who is telling this story, is naming himself as something else. He's saying he is a shadow. If he said like a shadow, then that would be a simile. Okay? And then here's a simple example of alliteration, words or warm. So 2 W words separated by a connecting word. And then if you read the rest of the book, you'll see this phrase 4 or 5 times in the book, when you go owling. So that phrase is used over and over again. So this is just an example of one page, but you're going to have choice. Remember to have this resource out, maybe on a different device, or maybe you have it in a different window to look at while you're reading these poems. Okay, readers, it's now time for you to try. You'll find the activity in Seesaw. When you open the activity, you'll see that we've done a template, a 5-page template, and I've already explained what the poems were. Here you're looking at the second one called April, and you use the color bar here to match up the colors and show us what you notice. What literary devices can you find? And I just want to remind you that the ones on top are easier, and then when we get down here to the bottom, they become a little bit more difficult. If you don't find them all, it's okay. Just try your best to see what you can notice and think about what the author means when he or she uses these devices. Have fun, second graders.